My daughter ditched me at Easter because of her sick mother-in-law. Then I saw them in Hawaii. One text later, she regretted it. Have you ever felt like you gave someone your all, only to suddenly realize you meant nothing to them? I found out in the worst way possible. Last Easter, my daughter canceled my visit with the excuse that her mother-in-law was sick. 3 days later, I saw photos of them enjoying a vacation in Hawaii. And the worst part? I'd been paying her bills for years. But this story doesn't, and how you might think. Today, I'll tell you how my own daughter betrayed me, abandoned me, and how, surprisingly, one simple message changed everything. If you've ever felt used by someone you love deeply, this story will hit home. You know that feeling where you do anything for your kids? That was exactly how it was for me. My name is Gloria Ferreira. I'm 63, and for the past 5 years, I've religiously sent $7,000 every month to my only daughter, Deborah. She moved to Boston with her husband Bruno and my little grandson Lucas, who's now 6 years old. I remember the day they came to my house with those bright eyes, talking about the incredible opportunity they had in Boston. Bruno had landed a job at a tech company, and Deborah could pursue her graduate studies at her dream university. "Mom, this is our big break," she said, holding my hands. "But the cost of living there is so high. I don't know if we can make it." I looked around. My apartment, at the photos on the wall showing a lifetime of hard work. I had just retired as a bank manager after a 35-year career. I had saved every penny thinking about my golden years. "How much do you need?" I asked. By the end of that week, I emptied my savings to make the down payment on their Boston house. $300,000, my entire future deposited in my daughter's hands. "It's just until we get settled, Mom. I promise we'll pay you back everything," Deborah said, hugging me at the airport. I never asked for anything in return. Each month, I sent my $7,000, saving from my retirement, selling old jewelry, baking, treats to supplement my income. During the first few years, I traveled to Boston several times to help with Lucas. I stayed for weeks taking care of him while Deborah studied and Bruno worked. I spent 2 Christmases alone because it was too expensive for them to visit me. "Mom, I don't know what we'd do without you," Deborah would say during our video calls, while I admired the huge house my money was helping to maintain. Once I stayed there for 2 months when Lucas had severe pneumonia. I slept on the couch, prepared all the meals, cleaned the house. When Bruno arrived, I would retreat to the guest room. He always looked at me like I was an intruder, even though my money paid half their mortgage. "You're a blessing, Mrs. Gloria," he would say, without ever really looking me in the eyes. In 5 years, I never missed a payment, never sent a penny late. I sold my car so I could continue sending money when inflation got tight. I gave up on trips I'd always dreamed of taking, all because in my heart, I thought I was building a future for my daughter and grandson. And you know what? I would do it all again. Because that's what mothers do, right? They sacrifice for their children. At least that's what I thought until that Easter that changed everything. It was in February when I started planning my Easter trip. It had been 6 months since I'd seen my grandson Lucas, and the longing squeezed my heart every day. I called Deborah and asked if I could spend Easter with them. "Of course, Mom. Lucas is dying to see you. He talks about Grandma every day," she said, as I felt my heart fill up. I saved for weeks to buy special gifts. A navy blue coat for Bruno, those expensive creams that Deborah always wanted, and for Lucas, for my grandson, I bought a complete Lego kit, one of those huge ones he dreamed about. It cost almost a month of my retirement, but I imagined his little face lighting up when he opened the present, and that was priceless. I also started preparing treats for the holiday meal well in advance. I made those homemade chocolates that Deborah loved as a child. I froze them and planned to bring them in a cooler, along with the candied almonds that Bruno always complimented. Every day I thought of something new to make this Easter unforgettable for us. 3 days before the trip, I finished packing my suitcase. The plane ticket was already on my nightstand, along with my documents. I was trying on a new dress I bought especially for Easter Sunday when the phone rang. "Mrs. Gloria?" It was Bruno's voice. He never called me. "We have a little problem here." My heart sank in that instant. "My mother is sick. Really sick, you know? She's going to need to stay with us for a while, and we're having to prepare the guest room for her. Unfortunately, we won't have space for you this Easter." I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on my head. "But what if I stay at a hotel? I can help take care of her, Bruno. I have experience with sick people. I cared for my mother for years before she passed away." I heard an impatient sigh on the other end. "Mrs. Gloria, the situation is complicated. My mother needs absolute silence, and Lucas has been very agitated lately. It would be better if we postponed your visit to another time." "Can I speak with Deborah?" I asked, feeling my voice falter. "She's busy preparing the room for my mother. Can I ask her to call you later?" I hung up the phone and sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the packed suitcase, at the gifts wrapped with such care. Deborah didn't call me later. Not that day, nor the next. When I finally managed to speak with her, 2 days later, her voice was distant, hurried. "Mom, I'm really sorry. The situation here is crazy with Bruno's mother. I promise we'll make it up to you on your next visit, okay?" I couldn't sleep that night. I felt something wasn't right, but I pushed that thought away. After all, health problems happen, and family is there to support each other during difficult times. How could I imagine what would come next? Easter arrived, and I was alone at home. I prepared a simple lunch for myself. Sitting at the table, I looked at the empty chair in front of me and felt a void that I can't explain. I called Deborah that morning to wish her happy Easter, but it went to voicemail. I sent a message, but only received a, "Thanks, Mom." Things are hectic here. Hours later, it was 2 days after Easter when fate put the truth in my path. I was browsing Instagram, something I rarely do, when I saw a notification. Marina, Bruno's niece, had posted new stories. I clicked without thinking much, just to see how the girl I met when she was still dating Bruno was doing. The first story showed a paradise beach. "Surprise meeting in Hawaii. What a coincidence bumping into these three here." My heart stopped for a second. The next story showed Deborah, Bruno, and Lucas, smiling, wearing Hawaiian leis with palm trees in the background and turquoise blue ocean. The caption read, "Family vacation. Lucas is loving building sandcastles." I felt my world crumble. The date of the post, 1 day after Easter. The day when they were supposedly at home, taking care of Bruno's sick mother. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. I can't describe the pain I felt in that moment. It was like someone had ripped my heart out and stomped on it. Why did they lie to me? Why didn't they simply say they wanted a family? Vacation? Without thinking twice, I called Bruno. After several attempts, he finally answered. "Mrs. Gloria, I'm kind of busy right now. Can we talk?" "I'm looking at your photos in Hawaii, Bruno." My voice came out surprisingly calm. Silence on the other end. "Did your mother miraculously recover enough for you all to travel? Or was she never sick?" I heard Bruno sigh deeply. "Look, Mrs. Gloria, we didn't want to hurt your feelings, but we needed this vacation, just the three of us, you know. You're always around, always wanting to be part of everything. I am your wife's mother, your son's grandmother, the person who sends $7,000 every month to you." My voice started to crack. "That's exactly why," he replied, and his next words marked me forever. "You're just an extra in our family. A useful extra, of course, especially financially. But we wanted to spend Easter just the three of us, without having to be constantly thanking you or listening to your stories from the past." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I want to speak with Deborah. She's at the pool with Lucas. I can ask her to call you back later." I hung up the phone and broke down in tears. How could my own daughter do this to me? How could she let her husband talk about her mother like that? An hour later, I received a message from Deborah. "Mom, please don't make things harder. We just needed some family time. I'll call you when we get back." Family time. As if I wasn't family. As if all these years, all this sacrifice meant nothing. That night. I looked at old photos of Deborah as a child, at the Mother's Day card she made in school. "Best mom in the world," one of them said. I cried until I had no more tears. I had become just a useful extra in my daughter's life. An ATM with legs. I waited an entire week. A week of sleepless nights, of staring at the phone waiting for a call that never came. I saw more photos appearing on Instagram. My daughter and her family enjoying beaches, expensive restaurants, helicopter tours. All this while, I had canceled my supplemental health insurance to continue sending the monthly $7,000. When I finally received a call from Deborah, it was already Sunday night. They had returned from Hawaii that morning. "Hi, Mom," she said, as if nothing had happened. "Lucas is dying to tell you about the turtles we saw on the beach." I took a deep breath. I knew that voice. It was the voice Deborah used when she wanted something. The same voice she used when asking for a car at 18. The same voice she used when asking me to pay for her private college. "Why did you lie to me, Deborah?" I asked directly. Silence on the other end. "Mom, it wasn't exactly a lie. Bruno's mother really wasn't feeling well, but she got better and—" "Stop, Deborah. Please don't insult my intelligence. I saw the dates on the photos. You went to Hawaii the day after Easter. You never planned to have me over." I heard a sigh on the other end of the line. "Look, Mom, circumstances are difficult. We're trying to build our own family here, establish our own traditions. Bruno thought it would be better." "Bruno thought?" I interrupted. "And what about you, Deborah? What did you think about lying to your mother? About letting your husband treat me like a useful extra?" "He said that? My God, Mom, I'm sure you misunderstood. Bruno adores you." "No, Deborah, he doesn't adore me. He adores the $7,000 I send every month. He adores that I emptied my savings to make the down payment on your house. But he doesn't respect me, and apparently, neither do you." "That's not fair," her voice rose. "We're always very grateful for everything you do. But you can't control our lives just because you help us financially." Those words hit me like a knife. When had I ever tried to control their lives? When I offered to take care of Lucas during his pneumonia? When I spent Christmases alone so they could save money? When I sold my car to continue sending money? Deborah, all I ever wanted was to be part of your lives. To be your mother. To be Lucas's grandmother. I never asked for anything in return for the money I send. I never demanded gratitude. I just wanted to be treated with respect. "Of course we respect you, Mom," she answered, but her voice sounded empty, rehearsed. "It's just that Bruno and I are going through a complicated phase in our marriage. We needed this time together. And you couldn't have told me that? You had to invent an illness, make me prepare gifts, food, pack bags, only to leave me waiting? Mom, you always make such a big drama out of things. I knew you wouldn't understand." At that moment, I realized I was no longer talking to the girl I raised. I was talking to a stranger who had learned to see me as a resource, not as a person with feelings. Understand? What exactly wouldn't I understand, Deborah? That my daughter preferred to lie to me rather than have an honest conversation? That years of sacrifice were reduced to a financial transaction? "It's not like that, Mom." "Then how is it, Deborah? Explain it to me." But she had no explanation, just vague excuses, shallow justifications, and not once a sincere apology. "I need to hang up now, Mom. Lucas needs to take a bath before bed. We'll talk another day, okay?" And just like that, my daughter ended one of the most painful conversations of my life, like hanging up on a telemarketer. That night, I sat on my porch looking at the stars, thinking about all the nights I spent rocking Deborah when she was a baby, all the fevers I cured, all the scraped knees I kissed to make better. How did we get to this point? At what moment did my daughter learn to see me as a bank, not as her mother? I cried once more, but something was different. Among the tears, I felt a resolution being born. Something needed to change, and I needed to be the one to initiate that change. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I took my phone and opened the banking app. There were the $7,000 set aside for the monthly transfer, scheduled for that day. My hands shook slightly, but my decision was made. I canceled the scheduled transfer. For the first time in 5 years, I would not be sending money to Deborah and Bruno. Instead, I transferred $500 to a new savings account I opened in Lucas's name for his future. The rest went back to my savings account, practically empty after years of supporting my daughter's lifestyle. I felt a mix of guilt and liberation. The guilt came from that deep place every mother knows, that voice that says we should do anything for our children. But the liberation was something new, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't tell Deborah about my decision. I wanted to see how long it would take for her to notice, for her to call asking about the money. Deep down, I still hoped she would call to apologize for the lie, to say she missed me, that she loved me regardless of the money. Exactly 8 days later, I'll never forget, I received a text message from Deborah. "Mom, was there some problem with this month's transfer? We didn't see the deposit in the account. Kisses, we miss you." Not a call, not asking how I was doing. Just a polite reminder about the money that didn't arrive, followed by a "we miss you" that sounded as fake as her mother-in-law's illness. I took a deep breath and replied, "There was no problem, Deborah. There simply won't be any more monthly transfers." Less than 2 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Deborah, of course. "Mom, what do you mean no more transfers? We're counting on that money." Her voice had a note of panic that saddened me. There was no concern for me, just for the money that wouldn't be coming anymore. "Deborah, for 5 years I emptied my savings to help you. I sold my car, canceled my health insurance, gave up medications I need, all to ensure you never lacked anything. And when I wanted to spend Easter with my family, I discovered I'm just a useful extra. So I decided I won't be useful in that way anymore." "This is because we didn't invite you to Hawaii?" "Mom, you're being childish." That word, childish, made me laugh, despite the pain. Childish is lying to your mother about a serious illness instead of having the courage to tell the truth. Childish is spending on luxury vacations while depending on your retired mother's money. Childish is thinking family relationships can be reduced to financial transactions. "But Mom, how will we pay the mortgage? The bills? Lucas's school? The same way every other family that doesn't have a mother sending $7,000 a month does, by working, saving, living within your means. I can't believe you're doing this to us, after everything we've been through together. I couldn't believe it when you lied to me about Easter, Deborah. Sometimes life surprises us." I hung up the phone, trembling, but determined. That night, I cried again, but they were different tears. Tears of grief for a relationship I thought I had with my daughter, but that never really existed. What I didn't know was that decision, though painful, would be the catalyst for changes none of us could have predicted. During the weeks following the financial cutoff, my phone rang constantly. Bruno, furious, left voice messages accusing me of abandoning the family and punishing my grandson over a simple misunderstanding. Deborah alternated between cold messages and emotional appeals, always revolving around the theme of money. Not once was there a sincere apology. Not in any call did I notice genuine concern for my well-being. It was Marina, Bruno's niece, who unwittingly kept me informed about what was happening in Boston. Through her social media posts, I saw that, My daughter's luxurious life was beginning to change. There were no more dinners at expensive restaurants or shopping at designer stores. About 2 months later, I received an unexpected call from Deborah. Her voice was different, broken, vulnerable in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Mom, Bruno lost his job." I felt a tightness in my heart. Despite everything, I didn't wish ill on my family. "I'm sorry to hear that, Deborah. He's not handling the situation well. He's drinking a lot, yelling at Lucas." She paused, and I could hear the contained crying. "Things are rough here." I wanted to ask why Bruno had lost his job, but something told me that would be interpreted as in, "I told you so." Instead, I just listened. "Mom, I know I was wrong with you. I know we hurt you deeply. I just wanted you to know that I'm seeing things more clearly now." It was the closest thing to an apology I had heard until then. "Thank you for saying that, Deborah. It means a lot to me." In the following weeks, the calls became more frequent. Bruno had become increasingly verbally aggressive. The loss of his job, combined with the loss of my financial help, revealed a side of him that, apparently, had always been there, just masked by material comfort. "He says it's all your fault, Mom. That if you hadn't cut off the money, none of this would be happening." And what do you think, Deborah? I think we're reaping what we sowed. Years living beyond our means, years thinking we deserved. More and more. 3 months after my decision, I received a call at 2 a.m. It was Deborah crying desperately. "Mom, I need your help. Bruno and I, it's over. He left the house taking almost everything. Lucas has a high fever. I have no money for medicine. The fridge is empty. Where are you now?" "At home." "What's left of it?" "Bruno canceled the lease. We have to leave in 3 days." I took a deep breath. Years ago, I would have immediately transferred money, bought plane tickets, rushed to solve everything. But something had changed in me. "You and Lucas can come live with me for a while, until you get back on your feet. I'll send money for the plane tickets." The crying on the other end intensified. "Thank you, Mom. I'm so sorry. For everything." For the first time in many months, I felt these words were sincere. 3 days later, I opened my door to an unrecognizable Deborah, thin, with deep, dark circles under her eyes, holding a feverish Lucas in her arms. Gone was the elegant woman who posted photos from expensive restaurants. She was just a desperate mother, holding her sick child, looking for shelter. "He abandoned us, Mom," she whispered as she came in. "When the money ran out, when the problems started, he just abandoned us." I took Lucas in my arms, feeling his body hot with fever, and carried my grandson to the room I had prepared. Deborah followed me, her small suitcase hitting against her trembling legs. He said he loved me, that he loved Lucas. But it was all a lie. I put Lucas in bed, gave him the fever medication I had bought in anticipation, and turned to my daughter. "Sometimes we only realize the true value of things when we lose them, Deborah." She looked at me, her eyes red from crying, and I saw in them a glimpse of the daughter I raised, vulnerable, human, imperfect, but real. "Forgive me, Mom." I hugged her then, feeling her bones through her skin, feeling her body tremble with suppressed crying. "We're starting over, Deborah. Both of us. That's all I can promise right now." That night, while she and Lucas slept exhausted, in the guest room, I sat on the porch looking at the stars, thinking about how certain relationships need to completely break before they can be rebuilt. During the months I was separated from Deborah and Lucas, something unexpected happened. I began to rediscover who I was beyond the role of mother and grandmother. It all started when, without the $7,000 to send every month, I realized I could reactivate my supplemental health insurance. I scheduled exams I had postponed for years, started treating arthritis that had been bothering me for a long time. On Tuesday and Thursday mornings, I began attending the neighborhood community center. Initially, I went just to distract myself, to avoid sitting at home thinking about Deborah. But soon I found myself teaching sewing to a group of unemployed women looking for a new skill. "Mrs. Gloria, you have magic hands," said Mrs. Nuza, a 70-year-old lady who wanted to learn to sew to make clothes for her great-grandchildren. That compliment, so simple, touched me deeply. It was recognition for what I knew how to do, for what I could teach, not for the money I could give. On Thursdays, I started participating in a book club. On Saturdays, I returned to attending Mass, made new friends, began participating in community life, and with each of these small steps, I felt stronger, more complete. One afternoon, while browsing the internet, I found an online financial management course for seniors. I signed up immediately. For years, I had managed others' finances, but never really took care of my own with the same zeal. "It's never too late to learn to value your own money," the professor said in the introductory video. And he was right. It's never too late. I started reorganizing my finances, planning for the future. I realized that without the $7,000 I sent to Deborah every month, I could not only survive, but live with dignity and even start saving again. It was during this period of self-discovery that I realized something crucial. For years, I had defined my worth based on what I could do for others, especially for Deborah. I didn't regret the generosity, but I regretted forgetting to keep some of that love for myself. In one of the book club meetings, we were discussing a novel about a woman who spent her entire life dedicated to her family, only to be abandoned in old age. But shouldn't she expect gratitude for doing what a mother naturally does? Asked one of the participants. I found myself reflecting on that question for days. Was it ungrateful to expect recognition for sacrifice? Was giving everything, for a child to the point of erasing oneself as a person, really love or just emotional dependency disguised as devotion? One afternoon, while organizing old photos, I found one of myself at 30, before getting married. In the photo, I smiled confidently, dressed in an elegant suit, in front of the bank where I had just been promoted to manager. My eyes sparkled, with the promise of a future that seemed infinite in possibilities. "Who are you now, Gloria?" I asked my reflection in the mirror. The answer came slowly, in the days and weeks that followed. I was a woman who had raised a daughter alone after divorce, a professional who built a solid career in the banking sector, a loyal friend, a helpful neighbor, an engaged citizen, someone who knew how to sew, cook, manage, advise, someone who had intrinsic value, regardless of what I did for others. I began to realize that for many women of my generation, being a mother often meant disappearing as an individual. We gave so much of ourselves that, when our children grew up and followed their own paths, we were left not knowing who we were. "You seem different, Gloria," my friend Teresa commented during coffee. "Lighter, more present." "I'm learning to be present for myself, Teresa," I replied, surprised at my own clarity. After decades of being present only for others. It was in this state of mind, in this process of personal rediscovery, that I welcomed Deborah and Lucas into my home. No longer as the desperate mother, eager to please, to be needed, but as a woman who had rediscovered her own worth and who could now offer shelter from a place of strength, not neediness. My heart was open to receive them, but my mind was clear about the boundaries I needed to establish. This clarity, this newly discovered inner strength, would be fundamental to rebuild a healthy relationship with my daughter. A relationship based on mutual respect, not on financial or emotional dependency. On the night Deborah and Lucas arrived after putting them to bed, I returned to the porch and looked at the stars, silently thanking the painful process that led me to find myself again. Sometimes, we need to lose something precious to discover. something even more valuable: ourselves. The first days with Deborah and Lucas at home were a mix of joy and tension. The joy of having my grandson around, of hearing his laughter filling the house that had been silent for so long. The tension of establishing new rules, new boundaries with my daughter. Deborah, I called her for a talk on the third day after Lucas had gone to sleep. We need to talk about how our living together will work. She sat at the kitchen table, her restless hands playing with a napkin. She looked like a teenager being called for a serious conversation, not a 35-year-old woman. "I'm listening, Mom." Her voice was low, hesitant. "You and Lucas are welcome to stay here while you get reorganized. But I need you to understand some things. First, I won't be Lucas's full-time babysitter while you reorganize your life. I love my grandson more than anything, but I have my commitments, my classes, my book group." I saw the surprise in her eyes. The old Gloria would have canceled everything to take care of her grandson full-time, to be useful. "Second, I expect you to look for a job as soon as possible. I can help with some basic expenses now, but you need to take responsibility for your life and Lucas's." Deborah nodded, eyes lowered. "And third, most importantly, we need to rebuild our relationship as mother and daughter, not as provider and dependent. This means honest conversations, mutual respect, and clear boundaries." "I understand, Mom," she replied, finally looking me in the eyes. "I think I spent so much time seeing you as a source of resources that I forgot what it's like to have a real mother, and what it's like to be a real daughter." Those words touched my heart. It was a small step, but a significant one. In the following days, we established a routine. In the mornings, I would take Lucas to school while Deborah looked for work. In the afternoons, while I taught sewing at the community center, Deborah would pick up Lucas and take care of the house. We shared the tasks, the responsibilities, like two adults sharing a space. It wasn't easy. We had arguments, moments of tension. I constantly needed to remind myself not to give in to the temptation to solve all of Deborah's problems, not to open my wallet every time she mentioned a difficulty. A month after they arrived, during dinner, Deborah announced excitedly, "I got a job. I'm going to work as an administrative assistant at a medical clinic. The salary isn't anything extraordinary, but it's a start." We celebrated with an improvised cake. That night, I saw a new sparkle in my daughter's eyes, the sparkle of genuine pride, of personal achievement. 2 weeks later, Deborah came home from work with a serious expression. "Mom, I've been thinking, I need to have my own space. You've been wonderful taking us in, but I think Lucas and I need to truly start over." I felt a tightness in my heart. Part of me feared she was planning to go back to Bruno, back to that toxic dynamic. I found a small apartment to rent, 4 blocks from Lucas's school. It's simple, but it's what I can afford with my current salary. "Are you sure you can handle all the expenses?" I asked, concerned but trying not to sound controlling. "It won't be easy," she admitted, with an honesty that surprised me. "I'll have to save on many things, work overtime when possible. But," she hesitated, teary-eyed, "I need to do this. For myself. To show Lucas that we can start over, that we can be strong." In that moment, I saw my daughter really grow up before my eyes. Not in height or age, but in maturity, in self-knowledge. "I'm proud of you, Deborah," I said, holding her hands. "And I'll be here for whatever you need. Not as a bank, but as your mother and Lucas's grandmother." 2 months after they arrived, I helped them move into the small apartment. It was indeed simple. Nothing compared to the luxurious house in Boston, with 3 bedrooms and a pool. But as we organized the few belongings they had brought and the basic furniture we bought together, I realized there was something different in the air. A feeling of accomplishment, of true ownership. That night, when I said goodbye to return to my house, Deborah hugged me long and tightly. Thank you, Mom. Not just for taking me back, but for letting me go. For letting me learn. Her eyes were full of tears, but they were different from the ones I saw when she arrived desperate at my door. They were tears of growth, of authentic gratitude. You will always be welcome in my home, daughter. And will I always be welcome in yours? Always, she answered with a smile. For Sunday lunch, for Lucas's birthdays, for Christmas, and for every Easter. I returned home that night with a light heart. The journey had been painful, full of disappointments and tears. But looking back, I realized it was necessary. Necessary for Deborah to grow as a person, necessary for me to rediscover myself as a woman. Our relationship would never be the same, but maybe, just maybe, it could be better. More authentic, more balanced, more true. Today marks exactly 1 year since that fateful Easter that changed everything in our lives. I'm sitting on my porch, watching Lucas play in the yard while Deborah prepares lunch in the kitchen. It's Sunday, and our Sunday lunches have become a sacred tradition throughout this year. Life teaches us in strange ways, doesn't it? Sometimes we need to lose something precious to understand its true value. Other times, we need to lose ourselves to find ourselves. In this year of transformations, I've learned lessons that I'd like to share with you, who might be going through similar situations. First, I learned that true love doesn't mean constant sacrifice to the point of self-erasure. I learned that I can deeply love my daughter and grandson without needing to buy their affection, without needing to become just a financial provider. "Grandma, look what I made," Lucas shouts from the yard, showing a small clay sculpture he made at school. His eyes shine, seeking approval, not for the expensive gifts I used to give him, but for my genuine attention. Second, I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfishness. It's an act of self-love and, surprisingly, an act of love for others too. When I began setting boundaries with Deborah, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was, without realizing it, giving her the opportunity to grow as an adult, as a mother. "Mom, I tried a new recipe," Deborah says, appearing at the kitchen door wearing an apron. "I'm not sure if it turned out good, but I'm sure it's delicious," I reply, noticing how our dynamic has changed. Now she cooks for me sometimes, instead of expecting me to always serve her. Third, I learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to repeat. Forgiving is a process, a path we walk together, day by day, rebuilding. Trust in small gestures. Deborah and I continue to have difficult conversations. We continue negotiating our boundaries, learning to be honest with each other. There are days when old resentments try to resurface, days when I need to consciously remind myself not to fall into old patterns of overprotection and codependency. Sometimes I still catch myself wanting to solve all her problems. I confessed recently in my support group for elderly mothers, but then I take a deep breath and remember that she needs to walk her own path. Bruno occasionally tries to reappear in their lives, especially when he's broke. Deborah has established her own boundaries with him, allowing supervised visits with Lucas, but maintaining emotional and financial distance. "He will always be Lucas's father," she told me once. But I've learned that I can respect that role without allowing him to manipulate me again. As for me, I return to work part-time as a financial consultant at a nonprofit that helps women in vulnerable situations. I use my previous professional experience, and unfortunately, also my personal experience, to help other women recognize signs of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. My sewing classes at the community center have expanded. Now I coordinate a small group that produces items to sell at fairs, generating supplemental income for women who, like Deborah, are rebuilding their lives. You've changed my view about aging, a 40-year-old student told me recently. I always thought that at your age, it was time to conform, to accept being just a grandmother, just a mother. But you showed me that we can reinvent our lives at any age. That comment warmed my heart in a way that no thank you call for the monthly $7,000 ever could. I look at the blue sky this Sunday afternoon and feel a peace I didn't think was possible again. It's not a perfect peace. There are still difficult days. There are still scars that sometimes hurt when the weather changes. But it's a real peace, built on more solid foundations than before. Lunch is on the table, Deborah calls from the kitchen. Lucas runs toward me, his little hands dirty with clay reaching for mine. Let's go, Grandma. I get up from the rocking chair, feeling a familiar twinge in the arthritis in my right knee. Life leaves marks on us, some visible, others invisible. But it's those marks that make us who we are, that teach us the most valuable lessons. As I walk hand in hand with my grandson toward the kitchen, where my daughter waits for us with a genuine smile, I realize the deepest truth I've learned on this journey. True love doesn't diminish us, it expands us. It doesn't impoverish us. It enriches us in ways no bank account ever could. And most importantly, true love begins with self-love, with the courage to say no when necessary, with the wisdom to establish healthy boundaries, and with the strength to allow those we love to grow, even if that means watching them fall sometimes. Is everything okay, Mom? Deborah asks, noticing my teary eyes as I sit at the table. Everything is fine, daughter, I reply, smiling through the tears. I'm just grateful that we're here, that we found our way back to each other. And so, we share another Sunday lunch. 3 generations united not by obligation or convenience, but by choice, by mutual respect, by a love that survived the storm and emerged stronger, more mature, more true. If you're going through something similar, if you feel that your generosity is being exploited, that your love isn't valued, remember, sometimes the most loving act we can do for someone is to allow them to face the consequences of their own choices. And the most loving act we can do for ourselves is to recognize our own worth, regardless of what we can do for others. Because in the end, as I discovered on this painful journey, we all have worth, not for what we give, not for what we sacrifice, but simply for who we are. And that, my friends, is the most valuable lesson I learned when my daughter ditched me at Easter because of her sick mother-in-law. And I saw them in Hawaii.